Rockgeist's Big Dumpling is a hip pack that is very well regarded in the bikepacking community. Fully waterproof construction makes it an ideal candidate for camera hauling duties or for keeping other valuables dry and close to hand. So in this video, we'll take a look at how it performs on the trail and find out if it lives up to the hype. Good afternoon and welcome to the review. But before we get into it, here's your usual reminder to consider subscribing. On this channel, you'll find all manner of bikepacking and bike touring videos, from tips and tricks to product reviews and even the occasional trip report. And in 3 months' time, I'll depart on the around the world bike trip of a lifetime, which I'll document and upload right here. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, consider subscribing. Now, the Big Dumpling was originally created by Porcelain Rocket, real innovators in bikepacking bag construction. But when they unfortunately shut down a couple of years ago, Rockgeist thankfully took on the production of their range of welded waterproof bags. And that includes the Big Dumpling. So let's just go over some of the relevant numbers. The Big Dumpling has a 6-litre capacity, weighs 377 grams, and costs $175 US. Now, right off the bat, people are going to be looking at that high price. Yes, it's pretty expensive, but that's to be expected for an American-made product from a small manufacturer. That is just the way it goes. Now, in terms of construction, it's pretty simple, at least on the face of it. It's basically a big waterproof pouch with a roll top closure, similar to a dry bag or a waterproof pannier. And it's held closed by this bungee cord with a tab that neatly tucks under this plastic hook. There's a divider inside which allows you to separate your wallet or your phone or your passport, but other than that, it's just one big compartment. The hip straps are nice and wide and well padded, which is definitely a good thing given the size of this thing and the potential weight it could be carrying. And there are these straps on the side that let you cinch it down and secure your cargo nice and tight. It features molly webbing on both the main compartment and the hip straps. And it has these plastic loops on the bottom which allow you to add carry straps for an extra layer or knee pads or maybe even a fishing rod or a tripod. So despite only having a single compartment, it still has plenty of carry options. It fastens around your waist with a single big heavy-duty buckle and has a couple of plastic keepers to take care of the excess straps. So after having a chance to test it out, what do I like about it? I've had the Big Dumpling for about 5 months now, and in that time I've had a chance to test it out in all sorts of conditions, including a lot of trail riding over jumps and rough terrain. Probably not what it was designed for, but despite that, I'm pleased to report that it stayed secure and didn't budge an inch. And it still looks brand new. The construction of this thing is super burly. All the stitching is immaculate and it's definitely built to last. A common failure point of these sorts of things is the zip, so it's really good to see that they went for a roll top closure to avoid that potential failure point. Now, the reason I picked up the Big Dumpling was to carry my camera. Hip packs are a great way to carry cameras because it helps to isolate them from the vibrations that can cause damage over time. And this thing easily swallows up my mirrorless camera with plenty of space for a bit of padding to keep it protected. The large 6-litre capacity is probably part of the reason this thing's so popular, and I've even heard of bikepackers carrying big full-frame cameras in it. The other reason for its popularity is probably the waterproof construction, and I'd have no qualms with trusting this in any type of rain. All of the welding is completely immaculate, and there's no way that my camera's getting wet. Finally, I really like the simplicity of the thing. It's just a big, single, waterproof compartment. It's not fiddly, and there aren't any zips that you can't use when you've got gloves on. So obviously I've been really impressed with the build quality and the construction of the Big Dumpling, but there are a couple of things that I'm not so stoked about. First is the buckle adjustment. I just find it kind of difficult to tighten the straps. It's kind of difficult to tighten unless you free the straps up from the keepers first, but then it's fiddly to tuck them back in again. Now, maybe I'm doing something wrong, but I just feel like it isn't particularly refined. I have an Osprey hip pack that I got for $40 Australian, which is like 25 US, and I just find the strap system so much easier to use. There's a buckle either side with a couple of straps that are super easy to grab and snug the whole thing up. It's just a far easier system to use. Now, the Big Dumpling's hardware is definitely built to last, but I just think it could be a little bit nicer to use. Now the other issue I have is that unfortunately my cheapo Osprey hip pack is also far more comfortable. The padding is a lot more substantial and it breathes better too. And I don't want to turn this into a comparison video, but when a product costs this much, inevitably that's what's going to happen. People are going to wonder why they should spend the money on something like this when they can get an alternative for a fraction of the price. So let's wrap this up and I'll try and explain why. My thoughts on the Big Dumpling are as follows. It's a ridiculously burly, hard-wearing piece of gear with an extremely high level of build quality, but it happens to lack some of the conveniences of its competitors. But in this compromise, there are some advantages. The straps might not adjust as easily, but they're twice the thickness and the buckle that they attach to is completely bomb-proof. The padding isn't as refined, but the stitching is probably the best I've ever seen. And yes, it's more expensive, but the money that you spend on this is going to pay the wages of bike packers like you and me, and not to some faceless corporation that's outsourcing its labor overseas. And of course, there's the fact that this thing is completely waterproof, whereas its competitors most certainly are not. Alright, so to sum it up, I would be fully confident taking the Big Dumpling on an around-the-world trip through the toughest of conditions, and I know that its contents, namely my camera, would be kept safe and dry. And that's where this thing shines, in its bomb-proof construction and its immense reliability. And if you can afford the high price, you're going to be rewarded with one of those rare pieces of gear that's for life. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think of the Big Dumpling. And if you've got any questions, ask away. If you liked the video or you found it useful, give it a thumb up and hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more bike packing reviews and content. Cheers!